Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, members. Welcome to this special meeting of the Highland Council. This meeting will be filmed and broadcast over the internet on the Highland Council website and will be archived and available for viewing for 12 months thereafter. Members in the chamber are reminded to keep their mobile phones and laptops muted, and members joining online should keep their microphones switched off unless actually speaking in debate. The in-meeting chat may only be used for motions and amendments. As well as a usual statement about this meeting, members, being webcast, I wanted to take a moment before we start to reinforce that our meeting today will be watched closely by Inverness residents, people from across the Highlands, and much further afield. Members, there's a huge amount we do not know about both the process that will be followed, nor about those individuals who may be placed at Cameron Barracks while their claim for asylum is processed. I would encourage you not to engage in speculation, and I would ask that your contributions are measured, respectful, and constructive. And please remember, we're talking about people here and their lives. There will be ample opportunity for members to contribute to debate and remind you that the standard rules applicable to council meetings apply. And members, it could be lengthy debate, so I would encourage brevity and a lack of repetition. Thank you. Now call the roll.
Thank you, Convenor, and good afternoon, members. So starting with those members in the chamber, could I ask you to confirm your attendance by pressing the green button when you get the option to do so? Thank you. So if everybody in the chamber has voted, thank you, members. We'll close that vote down. Thank you. And then we've got a number of members on Teams. If I call your name, just confirm your attendance, please. Councillor Baxter.
Present.
Councillor Boyd.
Present.
Councillor Michael Cameron.
Present.
Councillor Coburn.
Bartley.
Present, thank you.
I'll check in a minute.
Councillor Coggle.
Present online, thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
Present, Stuart.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Afternoon, present.
Councillor Graham Mackenzie.
Here.
Councillor McEwen.
Present, here, thank you.
Councillor McGilvray.
Here.
Councillor Miller. Councillor Morrison. Councillor Rosie.
Good afternoon, President.
Councillor Saggart.
Present.
And Councillor Willis.
Present.
My name wasn't called, Stuart. I don't think Leslie Ann's was either.
And
No,
mine
it wasn't,
wasn't
thanks,
called
Kate.
either.
Councillor Gunn, I wasn't asked either.
Okay, just go through those names. I think I've got Councillor Gunn.
Present.
Councillor Kate McLean.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Niven.
Present, Stuart, thank you.
You haven't called me Marianne Hutchison.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you.
And Convener, I have a number of apologies this afternoon. So apologies from Councillor Green, Councillor Logue, Councillor McLennan and Councillor Ross.
Members, I'm not expecting there are any declarations of interest, but if there are, can you please indicate now? No. And as we now move to item 3 on your agenda, which is the Home Office plan to accommodate asylum seekers at Cameron Barracks in Inverness. Councillor Bremner.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Convener, for the opportunity to speak to this paper. Before I speak to the paper, I'll move the recommendations. I'd like to also thank the Convener and the Leader of the Opposition for their time during our conversations and trying to clarify the situation that we have been made aware of in respect of the Home Office plans to accommodate up to 300 single male asylum seekers at Cameron Barracks here in Inverness. Thank you also to the members of Council who are in attendance today, as I think it's vital for us to have the opportunity to raise the questions and the concerns that we have and communicate these directly to the Home Office. We have all had queries and representation from members of our communities, and it was appropriate that we arranged this meeting today to allow contributions from members to be made. The paper clearly sets out the timeline of when we were informed of the decision of the Home Office to use Cameron Barracks for accommodating asylum seekers and outlines what we know about the current proposals. However, despite recent protestations from the Secretary of State of Scotland in respect of statements from the Home Office about engagement or dialogue or being informed, I can assure everyone as leader of this council that we were told, what we were told is in your papers today. There has been no real engagement as far as I'm concerned, and trying to get clarification has been a challenging process to say the least. There is still a lot that we don't know. With the exception of the communication on the afternoon of 27th of October, which specifically stated not for onward circulation, and yet no more than a few hours later the Home Office had clearly issued a press release, we have yet to receive anything else in writing on this issue. Publishing frequently asked questions on their website is simply not sufficient nor suffice. I still await a response to my letter to the Home Secretary. Had I not received a response, I had fully intended following up on that letter this week. However, the Convener, the Leader of the Opposition, and I will write following the contributions made at today's meeting. However, not receiving a response to that letter, they have, not having received a response to the letter that they have received, to my mind, simply is disrespectful of the role of this council, the Highland Council. Despite what the Secretary of State for Scotland said yesterday, we were not consulted on the proposals. Consultation suggests a discussion or an exchange of views. That has not happened. We were given 10 working days notice of their intention before it hit the actual press, and less than 24 hours in real terms of formal written confirmation. In terms of some of the questions I have, there remains the outstanding. I want to know why Cameron Barracks was actually chosen. Whilst we have been told the use of the barracks has worked well elsewhere, these have been in rural locations, not in a residential area, within walking distance of the town centre. So why there? What makes a town centre location in the north of Scotland, in the middle of winter, a viable option? Is it really suitable accommodation? It's surely not the best for those who will be accommodated there either. We've been told that this was for 12 months only. We need this confirmed. I haven't had that confirmed. I want to know, when will the barracks revert back to the MOD? We've been told that this is, sorry, I beg your pardon. I want to know that if there are concerns about individuals who will be on that site, how is this information going to be shared? And who will it be shared with? I want to know about the additional resources that will come to this area to ensure that local services are not impacted, not just in the terms of the council, but also to the NHS, to our police and other publicly funded services. I want to know what the Home Office plans to do to provide community reassurance and actively address the numerous concerns that have been expressed by members of our Highland public. And I also want to know if there are any plans to place asylum seekers in Highland that have not yet been shared. Here in Highland, we have always welcomed people to this area and been incredibly successful with the resettlement schemes that have taken place. And many of those people have settled permanently here, made Highland their home, and are contributing to their communities and the local economy. I know that there will be some people in our communities who are fundamentally opposed to accommodating asylum seekers and others still who will want to, pardon? Yep, no bother. In fact, all I'll say is that the UK government minister said the move would allow the UK government to close asylum hotels faster. The Ministry of Defence, the BBC had been told, the Home Office, that the Ministry of Defence officials had to go faster and further to locate appropriate military sites. Members, you'll note one of the recommendations is that following this meeting, we'll write to the Home Office. I hope that you'll support the recommendations. Thank you very much.
Members, obviously there was a forest of hands went up almost instantly, and I'm just going to read out the hands that I've got, and if I've missed you, then you would please indicate again. Councillor Christie, Councillors Johnson, McIntosh, Mackenzie, Stewart, Robertson, Henry, Balance, Brown, Laurie Fraser, Knox and Gregg. Right, hold on. Kennedy.
Collier,
Yeah.
Cross, McDonald, Andrew Jarvie, and Stuart Mackey, and Ryan
And Tamala.
Ryan McIntosh, and Helen Crawford. That's what I've got there.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Convener. I rise to second the recommendations as moved by Raymond. I've been involved as a councillor for many years, having over 30 collective years on three authorities, and never have I seen a situation where central government has actually kept an authority in the dark so much. And information that we were told, and that what officers were told, we were told explicitly, it's secret. We can't tell it. We can't relay it. And we respected that confidence and kept it. And it was galling to me to find out, while still keeping the confidence with Councillors Lobban and Bremner, that the Ministry of Defence chose to do a press release and then interview on Radio 5 on that morning. And that really just pulled the rug from out of the Highland Council and showed what little respect we were actually being shown on this issue. This is not something that's been done in co-production or collaboration. This is something that we've been told is happening with little opportunity to actually influence it or offer suggestions. You can see, unfortunately, the blame game is starting already with Douglas Alexander and Shirley and Somerville both saying each other knew and whatever. I can tell you from the appendix we've got, that is an accurate record of what we knew and when we were told and how we were told. I want to start looking at it. You know, one of the things that, and I follow this quite closely, one of the things that the government has said that they want to reduce asylum seekers in hotels, and that's fine. That's a laudable stance to take, and they want to remove the hotels and the accommodation from town centre locations. Well, Cameron Barracks is a town centre location. There's no way about it. You can walk within minutes to the city centre. The building itself is not suitable. That's being acknowledged by the 1.3 million investment that is now coming up for it. So it probably wasn't suitable for the squaddies that were in there, and it's not suitable now. It's at the back of a housing estate, a large housing estate with one road in and one road out. And importantly for the asylum seekers, it is far from the point where their applications are being processed and where their legal advisors might actually be based. I think for all those reasons, the selection of Cameron Barracks is one that we need more information about as to how it actually got onto the list and why it was deemed to be a suitable location for being used. There are other locations. One of the things, and we've probably all had emails, one of the things that worries me is the community cohesion angle, convener, of this. We see almost on a daily basis on the news a story about asylum seeker perhaps being involved in criminal activity. And whilst some people in any society are causing problems, the vast majority of people in all societies do not cause problems. And I think this bad press that comes forward is something that will be built upon to actually impact community cohesion. And it's something we need to watch out for as leaders within this council, to make sure that we can offer a steer and give information, accurate information to people. Most of the communications I've had, people are just wanting accurate information. They want to know what's actually happening and when. And I think we can make sure that that is relayed by the Home Office and insist that it is. I think that will be a good step forward that we can take in making sure that people are kept well in the loop and well informed. The recommendations before you, and I should point out, we're are straightforward. Of course, we'll be seeking meetings with the Home Office as well as writing to them, but the chances of us being given that audience on what we've seen so far, I would say, are pretty sparse. But we will be doing all we can to find out more information. And I think one of the things we've got to make sure of is there's regular updates to this council as to what's happening, and in particular to ward members and neighbouring wards as to what is happening and the role and responsibilities that's in there, together with the roles played with our community planning partners, the police and NHS. So I take pleasure in working with the leadership of the council to try to get this information for the people of the Highlands. Hence, we're seconding the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much. I wanted to speak on this because I think, like many people, I worry very much for the well-being of the individuals who are involved. I think we can't forget that these are individuals who are fleeing their homes, that none of them will be in the position they're in without having experienced trauma of some kind. And I worry basically that the accommodation is just simply unsuitable for them in terms of its physical fabric, its location. And I worry about the number of people involved as well. I think the number of males in this cohort have the potential to be unaccompanied children. And, you know, I'd like to hope that if any of those individuals are found to be unaccompanied children, that they will not be housed at Cameron Barracks. It's just simply not suitable. And I know that unaccompanied children would become like looked after children within the council authority. And I think it's very important that if any of them are, you know, have left their countries without documents, that we're able to ascertain those are children and remove them from this cohort. I think it's also important that these people have adequate and decent access to healthcare, and that impact on our local NHS is funded by the Home Office. I think it's worth remembering that this is a dispersal site. It's not a home and it's not a permanent solution. I think there's just not enough information, and there's absolutely no way as a council, with this little information, the little consultation, and to be honest, the lack of respect for this body, it makes it almost impossible to be a productive partner. I think, in my own opinion, I'm just going to say one of the things is that I acknowledge the worries and the fears that are in the community, and worries and fears are fed by a lack of information in that black hole. And if the Home Office is listening, the best thing they could do to allay the worries and fears of the local population is to give us proper and fair information. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Convenor. Can I thank the leadership and the Chief Executive for this report, which, of course, because events are moving on, it's not entirely up to date. But it is, however, an island of measured sanity floating about a sea of misinformation, abuse and accusation that we have seen on social media. I'm not going to defend the location up here for these people. I know the Cameron Barracks better than most. It is a huge site. I don't think it's quite as confined and as unsuitable as we may be hearing. A lot of the concerns will be due to lack of information. The UK government and Holyrood as well have an obsession with secrecy. And any information you want will have to be, you'll have to tear out fingernails first before you get it. There's also a lack of respect to councils coming from both forums. And in this case, it is really important. Don't be fooled by the responses you see on social media. The torrent of unsavoury comment represents only the loudest voices, not necessarily the most compassionate or the majority view. I live next door to the Cameron Barracks. At the end of my little terrace, there's a fence. Beyond the fence is Ministry of Defence land. The houses at the back of my house are Ministry of Defence houses, or they were. They've been sold on. They now contain a collection of army families, Syrian refugees, and at one point, Afghan refugees as well. There was no problem with community integration. There was no community friction. And you can see that because the children are quite happily play together. You will see mums sitting watching these children as they enjoy a cup of tea or whatever together. There is no problem with that. This area is used to changes in population. Every couple of years, a battalion moves out and a new battalion of 600, 800, maybe up to 1,200 people turn up again. No one then is complaining about stress on services, which is considerable. It's wrong to say that the army coming in were all saints. They were not. Many of them went away owing me several drinks, if nothing else. But it's wrong to say that these refugees will be either all saints or all sinners. They are people. 300, we're going to get a mixture. But I can assure everybody that it will not be 300 mass murderers and rapists. And I do not give any credence to the suggestion that these asylum seekers will be populated with a group of wrongdoers. Of course, there are community concerns, mostly whipped up by those with other political issues to promote. Our job and the job of government is to allay these fears. The silence from government is not helpful. Lack of information is the biggest problem with the worries that are coming. We need to actively speak against these rumours and suggestions and alleviate the worry in the community. I'm not going to speak as a Highlander. The Highlands has a long, proud tradition of giving a warm welcome to strangers and those in need. We're being asked to do so again, and I see no reason why we should deny that proud heritage on this occasion. I'm not trying to say that everything is perfect. This is not a party political matter, although some will seek party political advantage with this in any other situation. This is a moral question about people and their lives. Some here will claim to be Christian or members of other faiths. And of the major faiths, compassion is a central pillar. Now is your chance to live by these pillars of faith. To be clear, my own deal, I'm a member of the Religious Society of Friends. Just winding up, sir. Quakers to you and I. Friendship and care of others is central to our belief. I will not turn my back on those in need for political or electoral gain. It may not be easy, but doing our part in helping others is the right thing to do.
Councillor Isabel Mackenzie.
Thank you, Convener. Colleagues and members of the public, the proposal to house asylum seekers at Cameron Barracks is the wrong plan in the wrong place. Cameron Barracks is not on the outskirts of Inverness, as we know. It sits within our community, surrounded by homes, schools and families. To suggest otherwise is misleading and irresponsible. What's most unacceptable is the lack of consultation. Highland Council, local members and community partners were not engaged. We were told after the fact. That is not how sensitive discussions should be made. The Home Office admits the barracks are cold and unfit for habitation, yet insists it can be ready in weeks. There has been no risk assessment, no equality impact assessment, no clarity on planning with the building, and no safety plan. That's not preparation, it's recklessness. Residents have contacted me, not with hostility, but with concern. Parents are worried about their daughters walking to school, to work, or to the gym. These fears are real and must not be dismissed. There are also serious concerns about site security. The wooded area behind the barracks allows easy access down to Derrybuck Road. Residents have rightly asked, will fencing be reinforced? Will there be proper security measures to prevent unauthorised movement through these paths? These are basic safety questions that remain unanswered. As a Milburn Ward councillor, I know this area well. It is a safe, neighbourly part of Inverness. That sense of security must not be compromised by decisions made without transparency or planning. Let me be clear. This is not about rejecting those seeking refuge. Highland has a proud record of compassion, but welcome must be safe, fair, and properly prepared. There are serious questions the Home Office must answer. What support will be provided for local services? What safety measures will there be protect both asylum seekers and residents? Why only male asylum seekers between the ages of 25 and 65? What impact has been assessed? What will they do day to day, and how will they access transport and services? Has proximity to schools, armed forces housing and unsecured woodland routes been considered? These are not political questions, they are practical and moral ones, and they must be answered before anything proceeds. As Edward Mountain MSP said, secrecy is the enemy of truth. The lack of communication has fueled confusion and fear. Highlanders deserve facts, not speculation. I am calling for regular updates and full involvement of local members. Our communities expect leadership, and we cannot lead if we're kept in the dark. Therefore, Convener, I propose Highland Council calls for an immediate pause on this proposal until full answers are provided, proper assessments are conducted, and meaningful consultation takes place. We must also seek an urgent meeting with Minister Alex Norris here in Inverness and work with the Scottish Government and COSLA to explore all legal and planning routes to challenge or delay this decision. Inverness deserves transparency. Our residents deserve safety, and those seeking refuge deserve dignity, not cold barracks on a hillside. Let us stand together for fairness, for due process, and for the well-being of every person in our Highland community. My colleague, Councillor Stewart, will be putting forward an amendment which I will second. Thank you, Convener.
Members, please don't use the chat facility for anything else other than motions or amendments. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. There's times when, as a council, we must decide whether we will speak with a clear voice or whisper from the shadows, and I believe, members, that this is one of those times. For weeks now, the people of Highland have watched this decision unfold, not through open, constructive dialogue, not through local debate, but through headlines and social media posts. This was a decision taken about us, not with us. The Labour government, without consultation or consent, has chosen to place 300 asylum seekers here in Cameron Barracks. We are told this will relieve pressure elsewhere, that it will be, quote, self-contained, quote, and that there will be, quote, minimum impact, quote. But the evidence we see from other communities in the UK tells a very different story. The truth, members, is they will not be self-contained. They will be free to walk the streets of Inverness, living among our families, near our schools, and there will not be minimum impact. In communities elsewhere in the UK, where town centre accommodation settings have been used, we see an increase in police call-outs. Women have reported feeling less safe. As Councillor Mackenzie has said, this is not acceptable, and this should not be tolerated within her communities. But members, let me be clear, the report states an invitation was sent on the 9th of October. A verbal briefing was delivered on the 10th, and a leaders' meeting was held on the 13th. Yet elected members of this council were kept in the dark until the press broke the story 2 weeks later. And still the report before us claims that the council received the written confirmation on the 27th. This doesn't look like consultation or engagement to me. This looks like a narrative from the Home Office. And I do not accept that any member of government, be it Scottish or UK, any faceless civil servant, or indeed member of this council, has the right to withhold information of such consequence from our elected representatives of the people of Highland. So before, I'd like to ask, who made this decision? Who decided this should be kept from members of this council? Who chose to brief only a handful of members and keep us all left in the dark? Who decided that the people we serve and the councillors they elect should be shut out from such decisions? If we demand honesty from the Home Office, which we should, then honesty must begin here in this chamber. Now, members, I believe in duty to our country, to our community, but I also believe in compassion, guided by common sense, not by unmanaged chaos. And I believe that democracy begins closest to the people, not in distant briefing rooms or meetings. And that's why I bring forward the amendments today, not to divide this chamber, members, but to remind us of its purpose. I seek a firm commitment that the Highland Council will insist on being fully consulted before decisions are imposed. We ask that Highland residents be afforded the right to speak openly and raise concerns about safety, services and community impact. And should this government push ahead with this reckless plan, we demand accountability. We're not opposing compassion, we are opposing contempt. We are not rejecting people, we are rejecting a process that disregards them. The Highlands have never been afraid of responsibility, but we have every right to expect respect. Respect for our communities, for our resources and for local democracy, and that stands between our people and decisions of distant governments. So I say to this chamber, let's not be a council that shrugs and waits to be told what will happen next. Let's be a council that demands to be heard, firm, fair and fearless. If we believe in open government, in honest accounting and in the sovereignty of this chamber, in local democracy, then we cannot in good conscience let this pass unchallenged. So I will place my amendment in the chat, but they're clear, principled and rooted in the same belief that has guided the Highlands and its people for generations. That leadership is not about obedience to power, but but service to people. So I hope you can support this. Thank you.
There's one point for me, Councillor Stewart. On the Monday afternoon of the 27th of October was the first communication that we had received from the UK government officially, other than telephone calls, etc. And immediately afterwards, this council decided to hold a full meeting of the council. And the date was already in your diary at the earliest possible convenience. So it wasn't an effort to keep members in the dark. But the communication we received on that Monday afternoon specifically stated, quite strangely enough, strictly private and confidential and not for onward transmission. So quite how the Ministry of Defence or the Home Office think that is consultation and being free and open with the members of this council is beyond me. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for this opportunity to bring the concerns and questions for us.
That's correct.
Is it? Okay. Yeah,
Sorry, we're living in the house, yep.
I'll put your mic
Muriel,
off.
I'm afraid
House,
you're online.
House, up.
Muriel Coburn, you're actually online and speaking with someone else. So can you please turn your microphone off?
Right, okay, I'll start from where I left off. The disrespect to this council, there's nothing going to make up for that now, and it's been a disrespect. We have not been informed about this going forward, but I do have three areas of concern I want to raise. One is that I would like to see that these regular meetings from now on actually have somebody from the council represented there, so that if anything does come up unexpectedly, we get early sight of it. The second thing which I have concern, which I've not seen any mention of, and I don't believe this is the case, that a council has no role to play, because I can't see where the waste is going except into our system. And we have a landfill tax coming up very soon, which is going to cost the council money if we have all this extra waste. So I'd like that to be considered in any discussion going forward. And the third thing would be that anything emergency or acute that cannot be dealt with at the Cameron Barracks may very well impact on Rigmore Hospital. These are my three concerns, and that's just where I'll leave it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Convener. The UK government claim the council doesn't need much involvement, but that's not going to work. If this is happening, we need to find a way forward without division, blame, hostility or fear. People who seek asylum are separated from their families. They may have suffered severe trauma having to leave their homeland. As Amnesty International state, seeking asylum is a human right. Each of these people have their own identity. Asylum is an experience, not who they are. Describing them as illegal is dehumanising. The UK government must give us more details on how their welfare needs will be met. Because of the UK government, the local community has had to deal with the sudden, unexpected news that 300 men will be brought to Cameron Barracks within weeks. This without warning, discussion, local consultation. I'm not hearing how the UK government are going to mitigate some of the strong sentiments that we're hearing and the concerns from some of our community. Therefore, the council have to be involved. We should demand financial help from the UK government for this purpose. What detail do we have for financial help? What detail do we have for extra resources? What detail do we have on how the UK government is working with the council and Scottish government? We need answers. To help the asylum community and help with cohesion, we must challenge this misinformation, share positive stories, perhaps look at creating a respectful, moderated space for conversations and questions. We could help facilitate volunteering and blended sporting activities. There may be people in the local community who share their language and culture. We can help people who seek asylum to have a purpose while they're here, perhaps learn a new skill or language. People are not the problem. If this proceeds, we must demand more help, support and details from the UK government to ensure the next 12 months run as smooth as possible with full involvement of the Highland Council. and I support the recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Balance.
Thank you, Convener. I'd very much like to associate myself with the remarks by Councillor Bremner and Councillor Christie, which I think were very well made and important remarks. Falche is the first word of Gaelic that I ever heard and was explained to me, and it's the first word of Gaelic I've spoken in this chamber. It's a proud tradition. Our role on this council is now threefold: to demand information and support from the Home Office, to build community cohesion and integration, and then to give these traumatized fellow human beings the best welcome we can. Yes, it's a Westminster-sized mess, and yes, there are questions to be asked, so many questions, and we need answers. But we've been dealt this by Westminster, and short of an immediate declaration of independence, it's going to happen whether we like it or not. I recognise that some people fear problems, understandably, but our duty now as civic leaders is to allay fear, build community cohesion, respond and reject the bile on social media, which is stoking that fear. Because if that fear prevails, if there is no community cohesion and integration, any problem will just get worse. Who are these people? Well, we don't know. Maybe Palestinians escaping genocide, Iranians escaping a despotic regime, Afghans escaping the Taliban. We just don't know, and we need to know. All we know now is that these are people fleeing from evil, in danger of their lives, coming here for sanctuary. Some of us might not want them to come, but all of us now have a duty to boost that community cohesion. And I think the reasonable people of Inverness have sympathy and compassion for people escaping persecution. I see the racist bile on social media, and I guess that most of it comes from Peterhead or England rather than the Highlands. We need to reassure people that these are not criminals. Of course, some may be economic migrants, so what? Last week we were discussing the huge problem of depopulation in rural Highlands. Economic migrants, by definition, are people who come here to work. Young people with enough get up and go to risk their lives crossing seas and continents to work. Isn't that just what we need? Churches and groups like Highland Supports Refugees will do everything they can to welcome, and the council must also welcome. So I'll be asking the Inverness Common Good Fund at our next meeting to grant a civic buffet to all of these asylum seekers in due course to give them a great welcome in our great townhouse. It is in the interests of the good burghers of the former borough of Inverness that we welcome our visitors, and that will make any problem which might arrive much easier to address if they feel welcome and integrated, if they're not constantly afraid of racist taunts or attacks. If we treat them as fellow human beings, which they are, it is likely to go smoothly. Convener, let's aim to show the rest of the UK how we can integrate and live with asylum seekers, because the best we can do now is to be beacons of compassion and welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Convener. As a city leader in Inverness area and a Melbourne councillor, I should be standing up here today to reassure the public that everything's going to be all right. Unfortunately, I can't do that. What we have now is just questions, lots of questions, but no answers. This is not good enough, and the Home Office has to engage with the Highland Council. We have to be involved, not just informed. We still have to ask the question, why Inverness? Why the Cameron Barracks? Did some Home Office official put a map on the wall of the UK of all the military bases, shut their eyes and stick a pin in? That's what it looks like. But we have to try and not overreact and hope that the Home Office will begin to work in partnership with us and give the public and ourselves the reassurance we need and deserve. This has been very badly handled by the Home Office. We have to be able to carry on with our normal lives, feel safe and secure. But the asylum seekers also have to feel safe and secure and not intimidated. That's why we need to get our questions answered. We need to have more information on the asylum seekers. We have to be convinced that the checks have been made, and the public will be convinced then that it feels safer, that we know there's not 300 criminals coming to Inverness, it's asylum seekers. Thank you.
Councillor Laurie Fraser.
Yeah, right. These individuals are here to stay in the UK. Once their paper documentation is completed, they'll probably bring their families in. So here is an opportunity for us to showcase the Highlands as a place to live. Put on a fleet of buses. I was wondering where we're getting the money for a fleet of buses. But Mr. Balance has said he can get from the Common Good Fund of Inverness. Get a fleet of buses and drivers and bus them around the Highlands and show them the whole of the Highlands, Wick, Thurso, Fort William, Nairn, Bannock and Suss Bay. Show them it's a great place to live. And some of them will actually probably return here and it'll help repopulate the Caithness and Sutherland. Vacancies exist in hospitality, in Bannock, Inverness, Nairn, Strathspey. I'm sure there's work at the airport, the port of Ardersier, up in Alness, Nig, Greenport, thank you, well said. Even if you haven't gone on the west coast, it's green over there. Fort William and the west coast. Workers required throughout the Highlands. We've got timber building, ports, hotels. Give them a packed lunch, bus them round, let them see what the Highlands have to offer them. And the odds are they will probably come back to us. Some of them will come back and settle here. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Knox.
Thank you to the officers for the report setting out the circumstances and timeline, and especially the legal framework which is set out at para 3.2. The proposal to accommodate asylum seekers at Cameron Barracks has understandably caused concern, confusion, and unfortunately a wave of misinformation, as touched on in paragraph 7.5 of the report, not helped by the utterly disrespectful way that the UK government has handled this. Let me begin by saying clearly, as set out in the report, asylum seekers are not illegal immigrants. They are people fleeing war, persecution, and unimaginable horrors. Seeking asylum is a human right enshrined in international law. It's not a crime. If the UK government proposal goes ahead, we will know who these people are. They will have applied for asylum and they will have passed initial screening checks. They are not illegal immigrants. In our Inverness Courier article, Val Sweeney reminded us of the Gaelic phrase, Cú mille falcha, 100,000 welcomes. This is the unofficial motto of the Highlands, but it's also a promise that we Highlanders extend to those in need. As compassionate and welcoming Highlanders, many of us will have been dismayed by some of the toxic rhetoric around this issue. Rhetoric that paints asylum seekers as a threat, particularly to women and girls. This narrative is not only false, it is dangerous. It exploits legitimate concerns to stoke fear and division. Women's safety must never be co-opted by the far right to justify xenophobia. Women's safety matters deeply to me, and so does truth and compassion. As community representatives, it's our role to counter misinformation and allay concerns, not to amplify harmful rhetoric for political gain. Asylum seekers are people who have already endured trauma, and they deserve dignity, not suspicion. Over the last few years, the Highland Council has welcomed hundreds of refugees from Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, without incident. They've integrated peacefully and contributed positively, as described in paragraph 5 of the report. We can stand in solidarity with those seeking refuge, while also acknowledging the pressures to our local services. We should take steps to ensure that if this goes ahead, our health and other public services are prepared and properly resourced. I say if this goes ahead, because of course there's no need for this at all. Labour's breaking its own promise to end the use of barracks for this purpose. Saying it's an issue of public confidence, that's a coded reference to populist tropes about people living in luxury hotels. This will cost the taxpayer way more than using hotels does. Creating caps like this will only serve to re-traumatise people who've already survived unimaginable horrors. Asylum and immigration policy is reserved to Westminster. If this goes ahead, it seems reasonable to expect the UK government to provide the necessary financial support. The Justice Minister has written to the government. She wrote to the government earlier this week seeking urgent answers. I don't think we've received a reply yet. She knew that we were meeting today to discuss this. The UK government did. While we can ask the Scottish Government and COSLA to continue to seek to clarify and apply pressure, the responsibility lies squarely with the UK Government, and our lobbying efforts should be targeted there. I support the recommendation that the Leader, the Convenor and the Leader of the Opposition write to the Home Secretary. The sooner the Home Office meaningfully engages with us, the earlier we can reassure delivery partners and the general public. Let us be guided by facts and evidence, and let us do what we can do to ensure that decisions affecting our communities are made with transparency, respect and compassion. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Gregg. David Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to thank everyone who's spoken so far for the sort of generally calm nature with which we've been discussing the topic today. It's clearly generated a lot of friction and rhetoric on social media. And I'd like to extend my thanks to the vast majority of people who have actually contacted me in person about this. Even the people who have expressed concerns about the plans have generally done so in a respectful manner with legitimate questions rather than some of the more hateful things that I've read online. It may surprise some members of the council and possibly members of the public that the number of people who've contacted me supporting these plans wholeheartedly has actually outweighed anyone expressing concerns. Moving on to the paper itself. The papers reference a Class 91 in permitted development rights. Now, I'm by no means a planning expert, but having tried to look up what a Class 91 in permitted development rights actually is, I can't find this referenced anywhere. I can find references to Class 72, C or D, which have emergencies mentioned in them, but no Class 91. And I think it is questionable at the start whether a government policy choice made in London constitutes an emergency anyway. I do appreciate that we have limited power to challenge planning decisions on Crown land, which if this was to occur on non-Crown land, would require significant planning involvement. But I would like a definition from somebody about what actually constitutes an emergency under these planning legislations. My major concern with the barracks are of practical nature. I think many councillors so far have spoken to how the building is not a suitable building to house soldiers in. So how are we deciding it's suitable to house others? What are the pressures going to be on the NHS and the police? And a specific pressure I don't think that anyone has mentioned is the large amount of these people are going to have travelled from or through quite high-risk countries with high TB risks, and putting a crowded lot of people into one barracks who all have high TB risk is going to need to be managed very carefully. And I would like to ask how we're going to do that. And finally, I would second Councillor Mackenzie's request for a regular update for local ward members. Cameron Barracks is in my ward, and of everyone at this meeting, me, Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Brown are likely to be the ones who will get the most questions and concerns raised to us. And for all the negatives I've ever said about the council's own transparency, I've never once thought I have not been given the information that I've needed to give answers to my residents. In my first interaction with the Home Office as a councillor, a week later I'm still waiting for answers to questions to give my residents answers they want and need. We need to significantly improve the communication we are getting from the UK government around this, and I would really welcome an improvement from their point of view. Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Convener. We're not here today to debate the rights and the wrongs of the situation that is about to unfold in our Highland capital's Cameron Barracks, housing asylum seekers. This is not a council decision, but a UK governmental decision. What I'm more concerned about is yet again the Highland Council's lack of transparency over the matter with which the members and the public we represent were first informed. First indications of this special meeting of the council was on the 14th of November, October, I believe, when it was mentioned that this was going to happen. Sorry, that was the 24th of October. On the 22nd of October, we then got another email from the convener apologising that we had to be informed by social media, not by senior officials of the council or by senior elected members of the councils. Councillor Baxter said in his welcome home speak that this was like the Chamber of Secrets. And yet again, this is more evidence to suggest he is right. How naive can we get thinking that and believing when something is earmarked as secret and confidential that it will remain that way? It's not the first, it is now the second time that I have come across this apparent veil of secrecy over the housing of asylum seekers. The first incident was also veiled in secrecy. Local residents found out about it this time from joiners working in a house in a house. The joiners knew exactly what was happening. When challenged at a public meeting I had arranged, which included officers from the social work department, all they would tell us, the meeting, was that they couldn't tell us anything as it was confidential and secret. No wonder there is outrage within the Highland community yet again over the housing of asylum seekers, even though this is not the Highland Council's making. The council has to take some responsibility over the way it was reported to the public we represent. Through social media is not the way it should be have been done. Be open with the public. This is why one of the reasons that we were elected in the first place. We now have to work with our partners to make sure that the housing of these asylum seekers goes as smoothly and as safely as we can. We need to encourage our overstretched police officers to start being proactive over the concerns the public will have raised over the use of the Cameron Barracks. And most importantly, we must ensure going forward that we don't get ourselves in the position again. Let's start from today making sure that elected members aren't, as has become the norm, the last people to be informed about anything. And more importantly, the public who we represent aren't kept in the dark. Let's change this chamber back to the chamber of honesty and transparency for everyone and move away from the chamber of secrets it has become. Thank you.
Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Convener. This has been an excuse me. This has been an amazing debate. I can see the hurt that people are feeling in the chamber about lack of communication and so on, and it's a very real issue and it does need to be addressed. I'm confident that it will be addressed from what we've already been told. I want to relay one or two experiences that I've had along the way. My parents-in-law were World War II refugees, one Polish and one German, and they met in Scotland, both in poverty. Their humanity overcame their national identities, and they went on to be highly respected members of the Highland community. When my children were young, my wife and I signed up for a charity known as Host. Sponsored by the British government, it promoted cultural exchange visits for foreign students at times when it was too expensive for them to travel home. We as a family learned so much from this exchange, and so did our visitors. We learn to respect and celebrate our cultural differences, recognize the common factors across our religious beliefs, and the parallels are remarkable when they are not distorted by extremism. We hosted guests from every continent, every mainstream religion and none, and the majority of these were the academic elite of their country. Amongst our friends around the world is an African gentleman, Nigerian to be specific, now a world-renowned authority, professor of restorative justice in an English university. He himself was exposed to religious persecution in Nigeria. Members, I have also personally experienced considerable struggle and hardship along the way. I've experienced desperation when facing eviction with a wife and family of 4 daughters who needed protection. I know when desperation knocks, any father will do what it takes to protect his loved ones. But I thank God that I was never faced with the decision to get on an overcrowded inflatable boat to cross one of the busiest sea lanes in the world. If I had been, I would not want to risk the lives of my loved ones. I would have said to them, wait here, I'll come back for you. So now we have 300 male asylum seekers needing accommodation and support. And we have Cameron Barracks, which was occupied by Afghans until recently. That didn't cause social unrest, nor did it create a crime wave. And before that, when the army was in residence, did every single soldier behave impeccably? We need to take a mature and meaningful position on this. We need to welcome these people to Inverness, support them in their hour of need, because that will pay huge dividends in the future. Rejection or resistance will keep people in desperation, and who knows what they could turn to then. But in our maturity, we must, for the sake of our own security, take appropriate measures to protect ourselves from the few, and I mean the few, who might not conform to our standards. I have experience of hosting and sponsoring a Ukrainian family in their hour of need. They, like the majority of refugees, are very careful not to rock the boat, and there's no pun intended. Most will want to be accepted, to be allowed to live with dignity, and to look forward to a life in peace and security. Thank you.
Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Convener. I wish to begin by making something absolutely clear. As an immigrant myself, I have no objection to refugees or asylum seekers being offered safety and temporary accommodation. People fleeing from conflict, persecution, or crisis deserve dignity, compassion, and humane support. This is a value shared by our communities across the Highland. However, the real concern we face today is not with those being sheltered at Cameron Barracks, but with the process through which this decision has been made. The Home Office has once again proceeded without meaningful communication or collaboration with the Scottish Government or the Highland Council. This leaves our local services, third sector organisations and communities unprepared to provide the support that is needed. We as a local authority carry responsibilities for health, education, well-being, housing and integration. To fulfill these responsibilities, they must be given information, timelines and resources. None of that appears to have been offered. Instead, decisions have been made centrally and imposed on local partners who are then left to manage the consequences. This approach is not only disrespectful to local governance, it undermines the well-being of the very people the Home Office claims to support. Refugees deserve stability, clarity, and a community ready to receive them. Lack of coordination benefits no one. We are a compassionate region. Our communities are willing to help, but they first be empowered with information. That is the bare minimum. Therefore, I call on the Home Office to engage properly with the Scottish Government and the Highland Council to provide transparent plans and to ensure resources are in place so that both the local community and the individuals arriving at Cameron Barracks can be supported safely and effectively. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Convener, and I start by saying thank you to the Chief Executive, the Convener, the Leader and the Leader of the Opposition, and acknowledge the constraints that you've been under. I also recognise that there will be two camps in this debate. Some will be all for maintaining the British way of life, our values, traditions, and uneasy at the influx of foreigners. Others will be more swayed by the humanitarian efforts and welcoming asylum seekers no matter where they come from or who they are. Both are legitimate views, particularly with the lack of information that we have available. But I must make it clear that I fully support treating everyone genuinely seeking safety with dignity and compassion. Cameron Barracks is a historic facility that was never intended for residential use. It lacks proper infrastructure, accessibility and living standards required for long-term or even temporary accommodation. The site's age, layout and location present serious challenges in terms of safety, maintenance and access to services. And I say that because I've been billeted in the barracks during my military service, albeit some years ago. But in the army, you shut up and put up. There's no comparison. Some might suggest that when the military occupy the barracks, there's no difference. However, the military bring their own life support and are mostly self-sufficient, a far cry from what we're being asked to provide now. I agree with the Council's approach in urging the UK and Scottish governments to work with local authorities to identify more suitable, humane and sustainable accommodation options. We stand ready to play a fair part in the Highlands in supporting those in need, but it must be in a way that respects both our communities and the individuals seeking asylum. I also believe it's important that the UK's asylum system is fair, efficient and respects the law. We need confidence that claims are properly assessed and that support is provided to those genuinely in need, while ensuring immigration rules are also upheld. But that said, an article in today's papers by Alison Pearson describes the experiences of a caseworker in the UK asylum system and highlights shocking failures and pressures being exerted on staff. And I'll go on to say that to ask that I think we should be asking both governments, and I'll use a phrase yesterday at Prime Minister's questions by the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Lammy, get a grip and put in place measures that might afford us all some confidence that we have a system that works. But in my opinion, the barracks is not the right place for this purpose, and we must press for a more appropriate solution. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Andrew John.
Thank you, Convener. As I've listened to the debate, I had something written down, and what I thought I was going to say is completely changed. Like, these debates are too often broken down, both online and sometimes in chamber, to, should we have these people or not? Are they all good, or should we host them at a buffet? When that's not what the matter in front of us actually is here today. We have a plan and proposal from the UK government that we may either agree or not agree with. It's not about who these people are or what the circumstances may or not be. It's what is this plan and what is the impact on the Highlands and the communities that we serve. Because what we're ultimately dealing with here is a comprehensive failure of multiple governments to secure borders, but also allow a common sense immigration policy. And here we are with it all falling apart. And some people in chamber today have said we need to allay fears. But what does that actually mean? Some people have concerns, and whether or not everyone here agrees with the concerns that people outside of here have or not, people feel those concerns are real to them. And the thing is, we don't need to allay the fear, because that almost insinuates of, oh, well, it's not real, so we can talk it down, that there must be an innocent explanation for all of this. And actually, those fears to people are real, and we have to get answers to those questions that come from that. And with this assumption that there's this innocent explanation, and this is all good and well, it just dismisses that. And the way that politicians respond to this is what either increases that fear or decreases it. And when I hear these tones of, well, you just don't know, or, oh, you're too silly, that just makes it worse. It doesn't get an answer. And there's the simple reality remains that even if we do get answers to people's legitimate questions, that it might not be the answer we want. It might not be the answer they want. And concerns still remain. There's this assumption that too many people today have made that there's an innocent explanation to all of it and it's going to be fine. And the simple answer is that we don't know. Because there's too many ideological assumptions and jumping to conclusions. On a similar theme again, we don't know who these people are. And just because we don't know, some people will label them as bad. And then in response, others will see them as entirely this group of unfortunate people fleeing oppression and that they all have good and genuine intent. When the simple reality remains, we don't know who these people are. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just what it is. We don't know. And the simple fact remains that when we don't know, from the last 12 months, 52% of asylum seekers have had their claims approved, meaning 40% of those claiming to be asylum seekers haven't been deemed by the UK government to be genuine. It's literally 50-50. Like, I mean, I couldn't more clearly illustrate what the problem is. It's not all good or all bad. It's actually somewhere in the middle. And this way we keep dealing with it, of fleeing to polar opposites, which only gets more and more extreme as time goes on. I mean, a buffet in the townhouse, I don't think I've heard anything more absurd in my whole time in this chamber. And there's just this increasing expansion to both the left and right. And actually, it misses the middle ground all completely. And we start coming with policies and suggestions that don't deal with the problem that's in front of us here. So when we have so many unknown factors, I think we need to get some actual questions. The UK government said this plan is for only 12 months. But when I read their own fact sheet online they published 6 days ago, it said, we hope this to be 12 months. So what do we do in 12 months' time if it doesn't get dealt with? What mechanism is going to exist for the council and any authorities in Highland to raise issues that may or may not arise from this potential camp? Because as the convener said at the start, we can't pontificate over whether there will be issues or not, but we know in the experience of other local authorities, there have been issues. So, rather than trying to make an assumption of there's going to be some awful disaster or it's all going to be fine, let's have a buffet, what we need to actually work on getting a mechanism in place for all public agencies in the Highland to raise any issues if they arise or when they arise with the Home Office to get answers. And in fact, we're being asked to simply note this when there's a simple question of actually, do we even want this plan or do we want to challenge it?
Councillor Mackey.
Thank you very much, Convener. The Home Secretary holds one of the great offices of state, overseeing matters of national security, counter-terrorism, immigration, both legal and illegal, our border security and, of course, reserved law enforcement for England and Wales. The work of this office should be amongst the most trusted, the most respected, and arguably, and most importantly, its mission needs to be clearly understood by the public. But the performance of this department and the abject failures of successive Secretaries of State are themselves self-evident and should, for us as a local authority, give us cause to worry. If you put the Home Office into Google, the chances are that the second most likely word afterwards will be failure. It's failure to maintain the integrity of our borders, failure to properly tender contracts, billions of waste, and a track record of overseeing a lethargic system of asylum with a backlog that is an international disgrace. Now, whilst it's right that we address our concerns, and we should do directly to the Secretary of State and UK Government, I do worry that this representation will be passed on to the faceless mandarins that populate Whitehall. Civil servants who are and have never been accountable to the communities that they are employed to represent, and they will simply move from this Highland Burgh to the next, whether it's in Scotland or somewhere else on these islands. The Highland people and our capital is being dragged into a national media debate, and played like a political football at the dispatch box and at parliamentary committee. But do not think that for 1 second that where there has been detractions, that there's some sort of Scottish or Highland exceptionalism at play. I think it'd be wrong for ourselves and to kid ourselves that the concerns and commentary that we've heard on this matter come from out with our region. Whilst you might not like what other people have to say, speech should indeed be free and fair. Convener, the way in which our local authority, our council leader, our chief executive, our members of parliament, constituency and regional MSPs have been blindsided by this arbitrary decision is unacceptable. And we must push back and ourselves not accept being panned off as we almost always are. Whilst I respect that the report and its recommendations are written in the way they are, I do believe personally that they could be more direct and more robust. I personally would have welcomed a recommendation that stated that we as a local authority would exhaust all avenues open to us for this to be stopped. I believe that the location of this accommodation is inappropriate, and given that the Home Office have acted with complete disregard for Highland communities and their representatives, I'll be supporting the amended recommendations made by Councillor Stewart. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Ryan McIntosh.
Thank you, Convener. The lack of information and cooperation is deeply concerning, and such actions only intensify misinformation and malicious rumours as we are witnessing online. It is quite unacceptable, and I hope this reckless conduct is not repeated in the future when it comes to the UK government. I understand that people have concerns, and I have them too, for the vulnerable asylum seekers who will be placed here. I understand the urgency to move asylum seekers out of hotels and placed into suitable accommodation. Now, for someone who has been placed in a hotel quarantine a few years back for 14 days, I can assure you it was certainly not a luxury experience to have been there, despite what some people say online. But is the Cameron Barracks an even more suitable alternative? I'm not entirely sure. And this is what happens when the lack of cooperation and coordination. Therefore, I fully endorse the recommendations laid out in the paper. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Convener. I would like to echo very much what Councillor MacDonald has laid out. And all of those across all parties who have laid out very legitimate questions seeking further information. And I think that that has been very well summarised by Councillor Mackenzie, who resides in this ward. And we should press across all parties, all groups, to try and get answers, because that is really key. I'm not going to concentrate on, I want to just touch on something very, very different from what other people have raised, and that is very much a sort of practical, three practical items. The first one is in connection with the Home Office engagement timeline that is laid out in this paper on page 11. And I see that in particular what happened on the 9th of October, where an invitation was received by us at 11:40 a.m. from the Home Office, but was not opened until after that meeting started. I find that very hard to understand how that could have happened. I mean, I worked for some time contracted to the Foreign Office overseas, and I had always understood that for communications of that nature that are coming from one of our state, a Ministry of State, there would be a very robust, high security communications network or protocol in place. So I fail to understand how something like that could have been received from the Home Office by the Highland Council and not actioned immediately and not actually monitored 24 hours a day. I mean, if we are to look at what's potentially before us, over the next couple of years, we want this to go as smoothly, as well as it possibly can for all of our communities. And I think we must ensure that we are absolutely on top of that, and that cannot happen again. So I'm actually seeking from the Chief Executive confirmation that we have that comms protocol securely in place and it is functioning, it's been reviewed, and that type of thing can't happen again. Secondly, I would like to seek some actions on transparency and trust, because I do agree that the more that we can share with our communities the better for everyone. And I include within that, of course, those who we're going to be hosting here, everybody. And on that point, again, I'm going to go back to the paper. 6.4 of the paper refers to operational meetings that have now been set up. Can we see the minutes for these operational meetings as they proceed? I think that would be really good. For example, 6.6 lays out that our officers are in communication and are raising concerns. Which departments are involved and what are those concerns? I think we should share that, we should know that, we should have transparency over that. That will help us all through this as this progresses. One other thing I would like to raise is that, I mean, as Councillor Christie spoke very well previously, you know, we want to know what's happening and when. I agree with that 100%. I thought it was really interesting. Wealden Community Council is where we have Crowborough. So that's where I think there are 600 asylum seekers are set to go into Crowborough. Wealden Community Council's leader and deputy leader have presented on-camera addresses to their communities, speaking directly to their communities. And get this, on their Facebook, their commentary section is live. So people who then ask questions, legitimate, correct, understandable concerns, many of which some of us have received emails about, some of us poo-poo, some of us are concerned about, that then those questions are answered by that local authority. I think that's incredibly powerful, incredibly helpful. The more information we can get out there, the better. Why don't we do that? And get this, Wealden Community Council has secured a public meeting with the Home Office in Crowborough. It's going to take place next week. Why do we not have that for Highland Council? We should have that for Highland Council. Let us secure that for Highland Council, please. That will help, again, all of our communities. One final point, if I may, Convener. Yes, 4.31 talks about that this is not a Highland Council proposal, therefore we will not undertake an impact assessment. What a nonsense. What a nonsense. We should undertake an impact assessment. Why on earth would we leave it to Westminster desktop officials who undertake that assessment? Thank you.
Ellen, with respect to, and I've been one of those obviously who was party to the information when it came in the first place, the original invitation to a meeting came into the Chief Executive's generic mailbox, and the details of the meeting were then picked up almost immediately thereafter. So, but if you consider that as a safe, secure, and sensible way to disseminate information to local authorities, then I would have to disagree. Councillor Gregson.
Thanks, Convener. I applaud the constructive tone that's been struck today. The avoidance of party political point scoring is very welcome. And in this situation, we need to be probably dealing with a situation by which asylum seekers are put into Cameron Barracks. That looks very much like it's going to happen, and we have to deal with that. And very much on the basis of compassion and decency, as several members have said. But that said, I do deplore the Home Office's poor communications here. In addition to that, as the Secretary of State said yesterday in the Scottish Affairs Committee, there seem to have been failings at Scottish Government level as well. I'm not going to get SNP members doing anything other than criticise the UK Government. I appreciate that. It's a sort of constitutional thing. But I still welcome the excellent and constructive tone from Councillor Knox, Hendry, the leader, the city leader, and others who have spoken about the kind of situations many of these people might have been in. We don't know details as yet, but that we do know there has been considerable psychometric, biometric testing, mandatory security checks, and we have assurances from the Home Office. But I think I'm looking towards the operational meetings, in which I'm sure we should be participating on a regular basis, I'd like face-to-face meetings. I'd like us to be sending Raymond to London if necessary, or making some face-to-face engagement. You're going. That's good to hear. Excellent. So yes, we've heard autobiographical stories. Councillor McIntosh, Councillor Cross identified, among others, the positive experience of refugees here and elsewhere. But we have to get down to practicalities. And if we are, as we might anticipate, bearing greater costs, and our partner agencies and organisations are, like the NHS, as has been said, perhaps we should be approaching the UK government to look at the Pride in Place Fund, which has just been announced. Ways of supporting the resource implications of this move, because it's likely that there will be implications if there's 300 people coming to central Inverness. We are a hospitable, welcoming community, as has been said. There's a long tradition of hospitality. Security for all, security for our residents and for those asylum seekers. Both deserve our best attention in the coming weeks and months. So I support the recommendation, but I would very much like to see the face-to-face communication, in particular, seeking additional resources as necessary to ensure that this transition happens smoothly and constructively for all. Thanks.
Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. I will limit a brief contribution to reporting what my local residents are demanding of us. There's just basically three things. Firstly, we have a duty to assist with these human needs arising from crises in lives. Secondly, we have appropriate accommodation, abilities, enthusiasm here in the Highlands. Highland people have expressed their desire to contribute and to be suitably informed about plans, progress and outcomes. Fellow councillors, let's do it let's first of all get the information we need and do it with enthusiasm and compassion. Thank you.
Councillor Edmondson.
Thank you. I welcome all the comments that I've heard today, the measured response. I just look at the Home Office here, and they might have thought that they played a blinder, but really it's just looks like incompetence to me. Just hearing about the mailbox that they sent an important message to just really sums up how they've operated here. And really, they should hang their heads in shame. If they're going to take people with them, they really need to do that in a spirit of cooperation and partnership. It's just appalling. It really is so bad. But we shouldn't be paranoid about it. They have treated the Wilden District Council, Councillor Crawford, District Council, with just the same contempt. And it really just says something about what's going on in the Home Office at the moment. The key problem for me, setting aside all the other issues that we've discussed at quite length today, is that the processing times for these people are just so lengthy. And I'm really concerned that actually, given that the basis for actually considering and their legal representation are all going to be down probably in the Central Belt, maybe even further, like my colleague Councillor Christie has said, I'm not quite sure how putting them in Inverness so far away from their legal representation and all the stuff that they need to actually determine their application, putting it so far away is actually going to help the process, and how it's going to speed up the process. And I'm wondering whether that might be a question that the council should ask of the Home Office when they write to them, to see how this is going to expedite anybody's claims. And as other members have said, 50% of the people being housed in these barracks will eventually come to make this country their homes and contribute to the economy. And really, the sooner that this happens for them and it's settled, the matters are settled for all these people, the better. So I'd just ask you could consider that. Thank you.
Councillor Atkin.
Thank you. I'll keep this short. I just wanted to. I think we're not acknowledging, and I think it does need to be acknowledged, that we cannot dismiss or disregard the very real concerns that do exist around women and girls. I mean, people have emailed me, and I'm not going to ignore their concerns and have any fear for saying it. Doesn't mean I'm being racist or anything else. They're valid voices that have to be heard in this debate. Particularly, for example, a grandmother emailed me last night, lovely lady, concerned her daughter attends Millburn Academy. There will be 300 men not allowed to work who have nothing to do in one place. Now, without information, that is frightening for a lot of people. And they can't be dismissed as bad people for expressing very real concerns, particularly mothers and grandmothers around daughters and teenage girls. Cameron Barracks is not suitable. That has been said countless times across this chamber this afternoon. So if it's been said, will this be included in the letter to the Home Office that it is not suitable, that maybe we need to start from scratch and collaborate and work together to find a better solution? I'm not advocating that the Highlands does not step up to the plate here, because we've done it before and we can do it again. But it's not going to work unless we work together and have a from scratch approach. And I'd just like some reassurance that that will be included in the letter to the Home Office. I don't see how we can just take this as a fait accompli, personally. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, many of the questions you asked will be answered by Alison Clark. You should do that after consultation with you, and that will be circulated to all members. Councillor Gregg also asked a question about planning, and I think that question and an answer from a planning officer will be circulated to all members. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. There's a time comes when I think that the principles must outweigh politeness on some of these issues, and I believe that time is now. I think the recommendations in the report, I understand what they're based on, but I don't think they go far enough. I think they need to be more direct and more robust, as Councillor Mackey said, because, you know, members, for too long decisions about the Highlands have been taken about the Highlands, not with the Highlands, and been made far away. We've not been treated as partners in government, but as passengers on a journey we did not choose to go down. The Home Office speaks of consultation, but we know that was nonsense. They may promise minimum impact, but we know better. You know, that's the plain truth. Like, if you look at the facts of this, housing 300 people in a city of almost 50,000 is similar to putting 50,000 in the centre of London. That's not good policy, and it's certainly not a good decision. Now, I echo the words of many about how constructive this discussion has been, but I have to say I am disappointed with Councillor Knox branding people as far right for simply voicing the legitimate concerns. And I think this kind of dog whistle rhetoric can be quite dangerous, because it makes people afraid to speak out and to speak their concerns. Now, you know, Councillor Kennedy talked about transparency, and I think that's a real issue that we've got here. All of us as members of this council receive confidential information from the Highland Council and partners such as the NHS on a regular basis, and it's incumbent on all of the members here to keep that confidence, and I don't see why this issue should have been treated any differently. But I'd like to draw attention to Andrew Jarvie's contribution, and I think, you know, he summarises it very well. The issue is people don't know the answers to a lot of these questions, so they are rightly worried, they're rightly questioning more and more, and when they're not getting the answers, you know, that comes from a genuine place of concern. So I sometimes think, you know, the fear of the unknown is perhaps worse than the unknown itself, and I think that's why my amendment, we're baking in having a meeting in December once we do know more, should the Home Office push this on us. So I think that's really important. But my amendment calls for 4 simple things, and one is that the Council stands firm to condemn the unilateral decision of the Home Office to proceed with this without consultation or consent. I'm calling for this Council to recognise that the UK Government needs to pause this, not scrap it altogether, have a pause all plans to bring asylum seekers to the Highlands, to allow them to engage with residents and their representatives here in Highland Council and indeed in Holyrood, because we all want to find solutions that work for local families, local residents, but also the people who have travelled to this country in need. Now, Councillor Aiken, I hope you will be able to support this amendment, because point 3 of it, that the Council acknowledges the fundamental right of Highland residents to raise and express those legitimate concerns that they have contacted you with. They've contacted me and many other people in this chamber, not out of prejudice, but out of a genuine fear and concern. And it is their right to do so, and they should not be stigmatised for that. And I also think, as I said, that we need a meeting on this in December, once this placement has taken place, if the Home Office continue down this route, where we can assess what impact it's having and agree what next steps, because there's far too much things going on at the moment that are speculative. There's far too much that we don't know, and that's not a good place to be when it comes to making decisions. So I think we need to get another meeting tabled in with all of the facts when they're available to us. So I move this amendment, and I really hope that we can rally around it and produce something that's a bit better than what's in the paper, a bit more strong and robust for the people of Highland. Thank you.
Councillor Bremner.
Thank you very much, and I can also thank all the members in the chamber for the tone of the debate. I think it has been an awful lot more respectful in this chamber today than I have experienced over the past couple of weeks in terms of the communication, or the lack thereof, that we've been receiving. It's just the lack of communication and the information and the engagement that gives those who want to spread division in our communities an opportunity, and that was mentioned by a number of folks in this chamber today. We really don't want this to be the case in our Highland communities. We need to understand what is happening in much greater detail. That's something else that has been mentioned by so many. If it's happening and I have no information to the contrary, it needs to be proportionate for our community. However, whilst I say proportionate, it also needs to be reasonable. I don't believe that the current proposals are, nor do I believe that there is a full understanding from the Home Office of the potential community impact, and this needs to be addressed. Just for clarification, I already have been in contact with ministers at the UK government in terms of a visit to London later on this month, and I am more than happy to expand the discussions to include Cameron Barracks. I'd love to sit down with the Home Office to that extent. Do you know what I need? I need the Home Office to speak to me. I need the Home Office to acknowledge my letter. I need the Home Office to acknowledge the letter that we will write after this council. Without that, I can't get the privilege that has been offered to Crowborough. I think that we deserve that, and I am thoroughly looking forward to the letter that I'm going to get back from the Home Office, to the letter that I've already written to them, and to the letter that we corporately will write to them. I'm sure that we have the ability to be able to bring updates to this council. Why not? This has been a special meeting of the council. It's something that's very much to the fore, and I don't see any reason why we can't bring updates. You would be expecting that, and I think that we would thoroughly be expecting to undertake that. So I also think that it's up to the council to be able to decide whether they wish to accept amendments. So I won't be accepting the amendment. I will leave it to you to decide. But as I said earlier on, I will be going with the recommendations. Thank you.
Members, it's not often I get the opportunity to say this. I'm extremely proud of you today, all of you, and the way that you have dealt with an extremely difficult issue in fairness and with sincerity. So members, from my personal point of view, thank you all very much. We now have.
Thank you, Convener. Members, we have a motion from the Council Leader, and it's seconded by Councillor Christie, and that is to move the recommendations that are in your report. We have an amendment from Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Isabel Mackenzie, and that is to add a further 4 additional recommendations. And again, the wording of those recommendations is available in the report. So for those members in the chamber, if you wish to vote for the motion from the council leader, it would be the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Stewart, it would be the red button. If you wish to abstain, it would be the white button. And we'll start the voting in the chamber shortly. Okay, thank you, members. I think everybody in the chamber has now voted, so we'll close that vote. Thank you. And now I'll go around those members on Teams, and we've got quite a number of members. If you tell me you wish to vote for the motion from the council leader, the amendment from Councillor Stewart, or to abstain, and I will start with Councillor Baxter.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Boyd.
I wish to vote for the motion.
Councillor Michael Cameron.
Please.
So I didn't catch you, Councillor Cameron.
The motion.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell Sinclair. Councillor Coburn.
The motion, please.
Councillor Coghill.
Amendment, please, Stuart.
Councillor Gregg. Councillor Gunn.
Motion, please.
Councillor Hutchison.
Motion, please.
Councillor Mrs. Jarvie.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Graham Mackenzie.
Motion.
Councillor Kate McLean.
Motion, please.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion, please.
Councillor Miller.
Motion, please.
Councillor Morrison.
Motion, please.
Councillor Niven.
Motion, please.
Councillor Rosie.
Motion, please.
Councillor Saggers. Councillor Willis. Thank you, members. Convener, there were 44 votes for the motion, there were 18 votes for the amendment, and there were no abstentions. The motion is carried.
Thank you, members. Members, we now move to item 4 on your agenda, which is the timetable of meetings. There are 2 items plus 1 additional, which is a joint meeting of Northpac on the 18th and 19th of February 2026. Can we agree those, please?
Agreed.
Northpac and Southpac, or it wouldn't be a joint meeting. Members, thank you very much. We obviously have the continuation of last Thursday's meeting. So could we have a short break, please, and come back by 4 p.m. Thank you. Members, please take your seats. If one of you standing at the back, can you maybe close the door? Thanks, John. Yeah. Members, we're going to call the roll.
Thank you, Convener. So, members of the Chamber, ask you to confirm your attendance by pressing the green button when you have the option on the console before you. Thank you. Has everybody voted in the Chamber that wanted to vote? Okay, thank you, members. We'll close the vote down in the Chamber. And then going around those members on Teams, confirm attendance, please. Councillor Baxter.
Present.
Councillor Boyd.
I'm here.
Councillor Michael Cameron.
I'm here too.
Councillor Campbell Sinclair. Councillor Coburn.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Coggle.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Gregg. Councillor Gunn.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Hutchison.
Present, thanks.
On the meeting. What's it mean when you put your hands on for like 2 seconds? Wait a minute, it is.
I think that might be Jan. Jan, you maybe want to mute your mic.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Mrs. Jarvie.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Graham Mackenzie.
Here.
Councillor Kate McLean.
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor McEwen.
Present.
Councillor McGilvery's left this afternoon. Convener. Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, here. Present.
Councillor Niven.
Here, Stuart, thanks.
Councillor Rosie. Councillor Saggers.
Yeah, present.
And Councillor Willis.
Stuart, Councillor Jones will be returning, but he's had to go for a couple of minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I just go back in the motions at 406. That's right there.
Members, we now move to item 4, or motion number 4 of your previous agenda from last Thursday.
Number 3, just confirm. Councillor Gregg's withdrawing number 3.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Gregg has actually withdrawn motion number 3, and the seconder, Councillor Christie, has agreed to that. So motion number 4, Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Convener. And this motion of the bank's closures is quite an important one. Goes back to earlier this year that in Sutherland, the last bank standing closed in February. And now we have banks being notified that we're going to get further closures come 26, in that we're going to lose Tain in January, Dingwall in March, and we've got Nairn and Gairloch also going to close. Now, this makes it really quite difficult for people that are not on a techie savvy to be able to do banking issues. Lots of elderly like to go and do face-to-face meetings. That is not going to be quite so easy if we are now going to be forced to probably go as far as Inverness, travelling from Caithness, Sutherland, Rossshire, to be able to get to a bank to be able to do that very same thing. Again, money difficulties as well, with the banks closing. ATMs have disappeared in Golspie and other such places. They will not put such a facility.
I'll go up this side, then I can hear you.
Drew, you've got your microphone on. Do you know that?
I didn't have it on, so it was off. There you go.
We could hear you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We were getting to the stage, yes. In other parts of the banking issues, we haven't got mobile banks anymore either. That's another problem. So it's a complete, hopefully a members issue for everybody, that we try and put some pressure onto the banks, and that's where I've asked that the leader writes to the Scottish Government, one, and also to the Lloyds Banking Group, of which Bank of Scotland is part of their empire, to see what can be done. But we also have coming on board the possibility of getting some banking hubs. And this has been brought about by inputs from some of the MPs in Westminster, and our own Liberal MP, Jamie Stone, has been quite vociferous in trying to get these established. So what we're saying in this paper is that we would like to see these hubs up and running before any more branches sort of disappear, so that at least people can go and have their face-to-face contact, albeit they won't be able to do the cash transactions so well, but they'll be able to discuss mortgages and other such bits of information that they need to deal with on a one-to-one basis. So basically, that's what we have for you. Thank you very much.
Members, Councillor Baird is right. This is a problem all across the Highlands. We're all been suffering from this, every single ward. And as there is no opposition to this motion, the motion is carried. Or the amendment, sorry, is carried. Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Baird. Members, motion number 5 is from Councillor Gregson.
Thanks, Convener. And I'll be moving this motion, which is essentially about the Council making a commitment, a statement emphasising the need for safety and security and support for our greatest resource, our staff who work in schools. And I thank Councillor Gale for seconding this motion. We need schools to be places where learning and teaching are able to take place safely and securely. The data is very concerning. Indicates that 67% of teachers across the country have reported physical aggression and verbal abuse over the last year. That's a huge number. Behaviour in Scottish schools we've referred to before. The annual report, indicates that aggression and violence have been increasing for the last 10 years, exacerbated by a number of external factors. And this motion, despite there being an amendment to the effect that we have a wonderful education system as it is, I don't think I'm misquoting there, but you're essentially saying we're continuing to do a good job. And I'm not saying we're not doing our best. We're trying hard. But it's very important, I think, that there is a recognition that this is an issue, that the need for 3,170 incidents of classroom violence should be addressed. It's not, we shouldn't be brushing it under the carpet or ignoring it. Very important that we identify our school staff who probably are still underreporting incidents out of conscientious attention to their duty. But the council has been unable to state how many assaults on school staff or pupils have taken place, how many incidents there have been of weapons or illegal drugs confiscated, and the evidence through the trade unions and through reporting is that there has been verbal abuse, physical violence, and physical aggression on an unacceptable scale. And so the motion is, as I say, all about giving a message of commitment to support our staff. It's to emphasize the importance of a safe and secure learning environment so that teaching and learning can take place with confidence, and our children's education is valued as strongly as it can be, and a message of strong support for our staff. Thanks.
Councillor Finlayson.
Members, let's be clear from the outset that, like everyone else in this chamber, I wish we did not have dysregulated behaviour in our schools, and all our staff and pupils did not experience behaviours that make them feel in any way unsafe. However, we all appreciate what the reality is at times, and importantly, we also better understand why we are seeing increases in such behaviour. Naturally, because of the knowledge and understanding we have, the council and schools are already taking action in terms of what this motion asks for. And while this action will happen primarily at school level, where it should be managed, the council, as the employer of all school staff, is actively involved in supporting schools, staff members, pupils and parents who have to deal with challenging behaviours. It should also be noted that because of the information and knowledge we have, we brought an Improving Relationships and Behaviour in Schools Action Plan update to Education Committee in June this year, which recognised the results of the National Behaviour in Schools survey that cited the significant impact of COVID on overall attendance and behaviour in schools and communities across Scotland. These results have shaped what is ongoing in our schools to deliver support and change, which we need. Regarding the specific actions in the motion, it is important for members to appreciate what is already happening. In terms of committing to a zero-tolerance policy for violence against staff at the school, this is already council policy, supported by an understanding of additional support needs and the many other challenges some youngsters face at home and in school daily. In terms of supporting staff by producing risk assessments for persistently disruptive pupils, this also is already in place and is always under review. All schools use risk assessments and behaviour plans. In terms of the suggestion that staff may refuse to teach certain pupils, generally speaking, conditions of service do not allow any member of staff to pick and choose who they work with. There are good reasons for this, particularly in relation to education. The impact assessment for this motion rightly highlights that measures would seek to protect teachers, other school staff and pupils from violent and abusive behaviour will have a positive impact. But it is clear that this does not extend to refusing to teach children. Indeed, the assessment states that marginalising pupils as a consequence of their behaviour would contravene the Human Rights Act and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in terms of a child's right to an education, working in the best interest of a child and negatively impacting their prospects and life chances. The impact assessment also goes on to highlight that teachers refusing to teach a child can disproportionately affect vulnerable groups, including children and young people who have additional support needs or are care experienced. Our stats show that 85% of violent incidents relate to children with some form of additional support need. Also, while I do not want to underestimate or want to underplay the impact that violence can have on anyone, I think it is important to put the statistics into context. The 3,170 incidents referred to in the motion are attributed to 643 pupils across our schools, which is under 2% of the 44,000 total pupil population across our 192 schools. In relation to committing to clear and well understood procedures for recording and reporting incidents, updated Assure and pupil staff incident systems have been agreed with the unions and they are now in place. However, there may be need to get consistency across all our schools and officers will look into this. Of course, a key element in all of this, which will support real change, is adequate staff training in dealing with challenging behaviour. And the Council's educational psychology team and the positive relationships team offer this training. And individual schools are encouraged to take up this training based on their own needs and as part of their ongoing self-evaluation. Finally, and importantly, there is an ask to ensure adequate support for staff who are victims of violent incidents. The expectation is that this is in place through line management support and our health and wellbeing team. But it is important that the offer is there for all, and officers and school leaders will be asked to ensure there is consistency across all our schools. So, members, my amendment does not diminish the concern staff have, and it recognises that the Council needs to support our school leaders and our hard-working and committed staff who know their pupils best, and it trusts them with help to develop the training, skills and strategies which can make our schools safe and happy places to learn and work for all staff and all pupils alike. Thank you.
Members, all further speakers will get 3 minutes and not 5 minutes. So, Councillor Craft.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the dedicated and caring school staff who at times have to deal with extremely challenging behaviour. And I know from personal experience how difficult that is, and I understand the sentiments around the motion. However, in my opinion, this is a top-down motion that has failed to acknowledge the huge amount of work that has been done, continues to be developed, and the policies and procedures that are already in place, and the motion offers no long-term solutions. Recent stats are encouraging and show a reduction in the number of pupil staff incidents reported to the Highland Council since 23-24 from both primary and secondary schools. Management of challenge behaviour must be holistic, consistent and engage with all individuals around the child. It must be a whole school and family approach. We have risk assessment training, protocols and guidelines in place, as well as training around de-escalation, awareness and techniques. And there is mandatory training in violence and aggression for those requiring it. We need to ensure that these existing policies are robustly implemented and accessible to all, with regular updates and training and full engagement with all schools. GIRFEC is a holistic, child and family-centred approach, and I am delighted that we are rolling out a GIRFEC refresh. For this reason, I support the amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I fully support Councillor Gregson's motion here. I think the motion is both necessary and indeed proportionate. It recognises that violent and abusive behaviour in our schools has become a serious concern, not only for staff, but for the pupils whose learning is being disrupted on a daily basis. So I think, we've got a right to provide them with an education and a safe place to learn. The Council does have a legal duty to protect its employees from harm. At the same time, the Education Scotland Act places a legal duty on parents to ensure that their children attend school and follow the rules. That creates a partnership, a contract between home and school built on respect and shared responsibility, and indeed accountability. Sadly, the national guidelines that we've seen recently have diluted this partnership. It focuses almost entirely on inclusion while downplaying the consequences. Inclusion must never mean turning a blind eye to violent or persistently disruptive behaviour. I'm also actually quite disappointed to see Councillor Finlayson, as the chair of the committee, bring this forward as someone who spent a considerable period of his professional life in a school. He must realise himself that this situation has directly impacting children's learning and indeed their attainment, something this council persistently struggles with. But this is not just about protecting staff, it's about ensuring that all of our children can learn in a calm, safe environment. And I think that's something that's being missed in this discussion. Research backs this up too. Scottish Government's 2023 Behaviour in Schools report found that 94% of school staff identified low-level disruption as the single biggest barrier to learning. Even minor interruptions, talking out of turn, off-task behaviour, refusal to follow instructions, collectively rob every child of hours of learning every week. Studies have shown that when even one persistently destructive pupil is present, the attainment of the entire class declines, reducing test scores and future educational outcomes. Everyone loses out. So the amendment that Councillor Gregson has put forward as a motion, is a very, very strong motion and something I support. But the amendment, I understand it may be well-meaning, but it simply repeats existing policies and does nothing to change the reality of what pupils and staff face every day in schools. So for consistency, clear consequence and support that restores confidence in our schools and in our education system, I think, members, we've got to get behind Councillor Gregson and his motion, because it does exactly that. If we truly care about inclusion and attainment, then we must first ensure safety and respect, and passing this motion will send a clear message that the Highland Council stands with its teachers. We value their well-being, but we also recognise that discipline, safety and respect are essential for every child's success. Thank you.
Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Convener. And I'd just like to say that I'm happy to second the motion that's been put forward by Councillor Gregson. I think what I'd like to make clear, first of all, though, is that this is not about trying to restrict the education of children. I recognise that every child has a fundamental right to a good education, but equally, every child and every staff member has a right to being protected from violence in the workplace and in the place they go to school. I have often had parents on to me about the incidents of violence in the classroom, incidents of violence in the playground, and the teaching staff are well aware of it, but are powerless to do anything about it, often backing away from when something physical is happening in the playground, but they don't have the tools to deal with that particular situation. And I've also had parents telling me that they're going to take their children out of school because nothing's been done about the violent behaviour of certain individual children. Now, I recognise and agree with Councillor Finlayson that a lot of the violence is instigated by children with additional support needs. I don't doubt that for a second. But where we feel is we don't provide the resources to assist those children to manage their behaviour, and instead the teaching staff are backing off when the bad behaviour kicks off. So kids in school being hit with stones, being hit with sticks, and refusing to come back to school the next day because they're terrified is not a safe environment. So every child needs a safe environment. Every child requires a proper education, but every child deserves to be safe. And that is, to me, the fundamental issue. And equally, our staff need to know that we support them and give them the correct tools and the correct resources. And that includes the right number of PSAs who can help them and assist them when violent children are there. And these children have to get the proper resource to help them in the classroom and the playground to manage their behaviour. Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener, and I thank Councillor Gregson and Councillor Gale for bringing forward this motion. I was present at a meeting, a parent council meeting this week, and it was made reference to by both the parents and by the teachers, and both the head teacher and the deputy head teacher said, my goodness, if we were to record every instant where a child swore at us, was abusive towards us, or hit a teacher, the numbers would be significantly higher than the number being quoted here. So there seems to be a pressure on schools to not report because it looks better. There's a pressure on schools not to exclude badly behaved children. And the points that they were making and the parents made was that the supply cover is an absolute challenge on a daily basis. There are schools in Inverness who have as many as 14 absences of staff absences in a day. How would we cope? How would we cope if we went into a situation where 14 staff members are down? And they said, and we are trying our best to get cover from the people who are on the list. And unfortunately, there's a working list of some 250 names that they can call upon. And they said the answer comes back as a thumbs down every time. So we need to do something to address this, because they said the challenge we've got is that people cost money to employ people. and one of our assistant chief executives spelt out in this very chamber that the biggest cost to this council is staff, and the other almost half of our costs go on stuff. So staff and stuff, but the people cost us money, yet people make a huge difference. The people, the PSAs, the pupil support assistants, and they emphasise the fact that it's only high tariff children who get a one-to-one PSA. If you're not at the highest tariff of absolute need for a one-to-one PSA, there is no pupil support assistant extra in that school. So the moment there are 1, 2, 3 staff members down, it's the head teacher. The head teacher that's out in all weathers in the playground, monitoring it. Used to be a janitor, it used to be a parent member. It was something like that. You know, if I take it back to a garage situation, it would be like me managing the dealership and saying, sorry, I can't take that phone call because I've got to jet wash the car. But that's what's happening in our schools, and we seem to find it acceptable because, we're not taking on anybody and we'll work within the budgets. It's not good enough. Our children are not being well looked after, and our teachers are not being protected in their roles. And they are disappointed by this. So I fully back this motion, and I think we need all the protection. And for Councillor Finlayson and those in the Education Committee, you haven't got all the facts and the figures. Many, many more are going unreported. Find out the true facts. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Now, I don't think for a moment that every classroom in every school in Highland is perfect. I don't. But what I do think is that our staff are trying their very, very best in every single circumstance. And the last thing I'd want is for this motion to make any sort of feeling amongst our staff that we don't know or appreciate or value how much hard work they put in every day. Zero tolerance sounds great, but what does that actually look like? In my opinion, Councillor Finlayson's absolutely right in saying about the number of children who have additional support needs. And those additional support needs are not just medical conditions, they're poverty. They're going to school hungry in the morning. They are being a young carer and having spent the night looking after your mum who maybe has an alcohol addiction. They are lots of reasons, not just the fact that some children have additional medical needs. And I think one of the things that I would say about our school staff is that aside from parents, they're probably the people in that child's world that know the child best. And I would say we have to give a lot of trust to our teachers that if they know our children, they will know what triggers our children. And it's about them being able to almost pick their battles. I think the council must run an incredible tightrope all the time between our legal obligations to our staff to give them a safe workplace and the rights of the child to an education. And there comes across so many times when the rights of one cohort and the rights of the other cohort clash. And it must leave many of our officials in impossible situations where they have to choose whose rights to disregard. And it's incredibly difficult. But the one thing I would say is that I do think our staff are doing the very best. I think our officers are doing their very best. And we do have challenges. But I would just like to say, please don't ever blame the child. They are going to be coming from situations that maybe some of us will never know what trauma they're coming from, what difficulties they're coming from, and what challenges they're coming from. And for these reasons, I'll be supporting Councillor Finlayson's amendment.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Convenor. I just want to say, really want to second Councillor Finlayson's amendment. I've heard some speakers this afternoon. I think that there's one or two things being exaggerated. I think if people attended our education committee, they would see the hard work that's going on to make life better for everyone. So I'm more than happy to second the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Convenor. I spent 13 years on the children's panel as a volunteer. I understand, and I don't think that too many things are being exaggerated here at all. I think we're being faced with facts. I have the utmost respect for people working in education and social work as well, and those who are faced with having to deal with these issues. 2 days ago, I was in a meeting in The Place in Inverness, which is a well-known, well-respected, essentially a youth centre. It functions almost entirely on grants, and they have a number of staff whose salaries amount to £12,000 a month. On a monthly basis, they don't know where that money's coming from to pay those salaries. They don't know where it's going to come from for December's wage bill. That amounts to £150,000 a year in round figures. And I had to I looked up online yesterday what it costs to keep a prisoner. And it's roughly £50,000 a year to keep a prisoner in a prison. So if we are paying £150,000 a year to the place, I will guarantee that the success and the quality of what they do there actually prevents more than three prisoner years per year from Allness kids, because the work they do is second to none, and they do it as volunteers. And I'm delighted that this debate is going on in full council and not just in a committee. I'll stop any moment now, Convenor, because this is a full council issue. The question is, how do we, in addition to what we need to do directly in education, how do we address our youngsters? We know they're teenagers. We know teenagers behave as teenagers. How should we not be putting more money in officially and not relying on volunteers constantly chasing grants, constantly chasing money, facing the prospect of failure when the work that they do is critical to the future social cohesion that we've talked about today in our society. I thank you for the chance of speaking.
Councillor McHugh. Councillor McHugh.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for this motion. I'm happy to support Councillor Gregg's motion because I think this is a big issue in our schools. I've had lots of parents and teachers speak to me about this. Teachers can't defend themselves against violence. We can. I know that some children need additional needs and they're getting the support they can. In my previous job, I actually watch children coming up through the reporting system and etc., and then reaching the courts. These weren't children with additional needs. These were just bad children and wicked children. And I'm afraid to say it, and I'm sorry to say it, it's not the teacher's responsibility to retrain these children in their behaviours. It's the parents' responsibility. The children with additional needs, the teachers have every empathy for them. Our teachers shouldn't be subject to antisocial or violent behaviour. No other employer would let their staff be subjected to this behaviour. So I'm happy to support this motion. Teachers are very hardworking. They do everything they can. And I think if there were more children excluded and sent back to their parents, you would find that their behaviour starting to improve in the schools. So I think we need to actually support our teachers and let them exclude really bad children. Not all bad children come from bad homes. Some come from very good homes. So yeah, I think we need to actually use the policies and procedures we've got in place, support our teachers because they can't defend themselves. They're going off with stress and mental health issues because of some of the behaviour of these children. And every child I know is entitled to an education, but that means every child, not just the elected few. Thank you.
Councillor Dundas.
Wow. Well, a lot of what I was going to say, actually, Councillor Lindsay Johnson has covered, and I just want to start by thanking our teaching staff that are out there on the front line dealing with these very, very real challenges day to day. But I just lift the tone a wee bit after that and just say that I actually had the pleasure of being invited to one of my local primary schools yesterday to be part of the inspection group where individuals from the community, parent helpers, social work services and other helpers were asked to speak to the inspectorate and explain and tell them about their experience of this primary school. And I sat there and I felt really, really proud of what the head teacher and the teachers in this school have achieved and what these people that were contributing to the meeting were saying. Some of them said that the head teacher and the staff have just got an amazing way of dealing with challenging behaviour and children that need additional support needs. And we need to remember that we're talking about people's children here. Parents and carers have children and we need to respect the way we speak about them. And they do have challenging behaviour and they do have additional support needs. And we have support mechanisms in place through the council that this school is clearly using and using it to teach their kids in other ways, taking them out of the classroom, exploring other things, allowing them to achieve in a way that they can. So I support the amendment by John Finlayson today, and I just have one thing to add to Duncan about the jet washing in the cars. I ran a restaurant and last week I had to do the dishes instead of cooking. But we get the job done, we get on with it and we use the people and tools around us and we get the job done. Thank you.
Members, I'm afraid that reaches the time limit and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members still wishing to speak, but time has gone. Councillor Finlayson, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Members, I thank everyone for their input today, and I think it is clear that we are all mostly on the same page in wanting our schools to be safe and nurturing places to work and learn. We want the best for our pupils, we want the best for our staff, and we want our schools to be safe and happy places that promote positive outcomes and a positive ethos. What my amendment, I believe, does, that is not included in the motion, is recognise the expertise and knowledge in our schools already and the central fact that our committed school staff know and understand their pupils best and how to support them while also keeping themselves safe. Of course, the Council and our schools are aware of the need to be proactive in addressing the issues associated with the violence and aggression. It categorically is something that is taken seriously, and I can assure you that senior officers and our new ACOMs will be taking forward actions to ensure that all those working and learning in our schools feel safe and supported. As has been said many times about different aspects of service delivery in the Highlands, and is absolutely applicable to our schools, is the fact that one size does not fit all. And we need to recognise this in terms of all kinds of training, support and engagement, as each school is unique, and each pupil is unique, and each member of staff is unique. However, we need to be able to provide the support each unique school requires, and that is very much a priority for all within the new education structure. My amendment recognises that we do get a number of reported incidents, although it should be noted that the majority of these incidents involve children with ASN and those in primary 1 and 2. And this drops off rapidly as children mature, become accustomed to the school environment and learn how to self-regulate. To address this, our psychological services and ELC staff have implemented a training course specifically for early years. This is especially important as we know children born during COVID experienced less socialisation than would have been the case for other cohorts. As well as training, record-keeping support and high spend on ASN that is in place, including dedicated additional support in a number of individual schools and our special schools this year. Our newly appointed ACOMs and ESOs have been working with their cluster schools on a regular basis to provide dedicated hands-on support. Inset days have also focused on training and professional development. A recent staff survey, actually November 24, asked teachers what worked best for supporting dysregulated and distressed children. Only 0.006% of responses said that the sanctions and punishment were the effective things to do. By contrast, building trust and positive relations with empathy, compassion and understanding and clear communication and a consistent approach accounted for 73% of the responses. That's what our staff told us. I also think some members here today need to really try and understand what education is about, what education in the 21st century is about, not Victorian education that some people have referred to today. And I have to say that I was really, really upset by the comments made by one member in this chamber, and I think everyone knows who that is. As originally stated, my amendment does not diminish the concerns staff rightly have. It clearly wants to support pupils and staff safety and well-being, and it recognises that the Council needs to support our school leaders and our hard-working and committed school staff who know their situations and their pupils best. Because of this, we will continue to empower and support our school leaders while offering training and strategies which make our schools safe and happy places to learn and work for both staff and pupils alike. And of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And to finish off, what I can report is that violent incidents in both primary schools and secondary schools in Highland have reduced year on year over the last 3 years, as was verified in a recent Freedom of Information request that came to the Council. Thank you.
Councillor Gregson.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks to all who have spoken today. We are indeed all seeking the same goal. We're looking for safe, secure learning and teaching environments. I would say the motion is very much a statement. It's perhaps a staging post in Councillor Finlayson's journey, and the work that's going on in our schools will involve expertise, ingenuity, creativity all the time. Teachers and school staff, ASNs in particular perhaps, will be producing extraordinary solutions to challenges in the classroom and school grounds. Recent history has given us circumstances which have indeed dysregulated and upset what we might have thought of as normal behaviour on the part of young people and children across our schools. But that expertise, creativity and ingenuity are not always enough. And no matter how experienced the teacher, how skilled, how great the bond, how strong the relationship that's being forged in the classroom, there are still, it would appear, incidents which are unnerving, can be traumatizing, can certainly be upsetting and affect the well-being of all and disrupt the education within the classroom and within the school as a whole. So the challenging behaviour doesn't stop no matter how skilled you might be within a classroom. We need structures, systems and strategies which actually support staff and are not seen as simply rearranging the deck chairs. The number of senior officers in the department doesn't necessarily trickle down to an easier deal for all in the classroom. Relabelling senior staff doesn't do that particularly with the front line, which has been referred to appropriately. People are doing amazing work and we should respect and support. This motion, and I thank those who have supported it, is very much, as I say, not just about saying restorative systems are out the window or saying that punishment is out the window. In fact, there may be a need to address just what consequences there are. Support, investigation, assessment. You can never have enough resources to do this, of course. This is an endless quest. But if we have a journey that we're embarking on to enable our staff to do as well as they can, this motion is a statement which may, as I say, provide a staging post for the good work which is going on towards a better future in Highland education. So the motion is very much stating and emphasising that we believe in our staff. We support them as our greatest resource, and we want to enable them to get on with their jobs and be able to work with young people as effectively as they can. So it's complementary to the amendment, but I would urge you to support the motion as a strong statement of support for our staff. Thanks.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Convener. Members, we have a motion from Councillor Gregson, seconded by Councillor Gale, and that's within your papers. We have an amendment from Councillor Finlayson, seconded by Councillor Miller, and again, that's within your papers. For members in the chamber, if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Gregson, press the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Finlayson, press the red button. And if you wish to abstain, press the white button. And we'll start the voting in the chamber shortly. Thank you. Everybody in the chamber has voted, so we'll close that vote down. Thank you. Then go down those members on Teams. If you tell me if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Gregson, the amendment from Councillor Finlayson, or to abstain, I'll start with Councillor Baxter.
Motion.
Councillor Boyd.
Amendment.
Councillor Michael Cameron.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Coburn.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Coghill.
Motion, please.
Councillor Gunn.
Motion, please.
Councillor Hutchison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Motion, please.
Councillor Graham Mackenzie.
Amendment.
Councillor Kate McLean.
Amendment, please.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion, please.
Councillor Miller.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Morrison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Niven.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Saggers.
Motion, please.
Thank you, members. Convener, there were 25 votes for the motion, there were 31 votes for the amendment, and there were 3 abstentions, so the amendment is carried.
Members, thank you all very much for your time today, and drive carefully on the way home.